start the record button, and we'll start our webinar for tonight. Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Robert Pelsman. I'm the captain that manages the Hunter Education Program. And tonight I'm basically going to introduce our panelists and write down questions that come in through chat that are getting asked a lot, and we'll ask the panelists to address those at the end. So if you got questions, Sean will cover this in a little bit more detail, but if you have questions, the chat function, only the panelist, which is comprised of wildlife officers, only the panelists are going to be able to see them. They'll reply directly to you if it's a, if it's a pointed question. If it's a broad question, we'll probably save it towards, for the end. One quick reminder, if you're new to hunting, I wanted to throw out a little shout to the R3 program, Harvest Huddle. It's a similar webinar that they're doing twice a month. Typically it's on a noon hour. If you're interested in it, they cover things, very basic introductory things to hunting and fishing. One question that already came in that I'll address right now, this whole webinar is being recorded, so don't worry about taking notes at lightning speed. It's going to be available. So with that, our panelists, we have Chris Geerdich. He's a warden. He's been a warden for about 9 years. He's currently patrolling the Mariposa and Merced County areas, but he's worked all throughout the state. He's on here tonight because he knows what he's talking about and he loves duck hunting. He sent this to me and he said his first duck was a banded spoonie.
Thanks, Sean.
No, apparently it was a banded greenhead. So then the other panelist who is putting these Advanced Hunter Ed webinars together, Lieutenant Sean Alagi. Like I said, he's the Advanced Hunter Education Coordinator for our department. He's been with the department for 21 years, lifelong resident of Los Banos. He lives for duck hunting and has many years under his belt hunting the Los Banos public areas and private clubs.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Appreciate that you're here. And I'm going to start it off with a poll just to see what kind of audience we have here. If you would, please look at this poll and tell me about yourselves, basically. You notice I used a spoonie in there. That's one of Chris's favorite ducks. It's got one over his left shoulder there.
They're fun to shoot.
Yeah. All right. Getting a lot of replies. I'm going to leave it open for 5 more seconds. Please reply. And all right, end poll. So I'm going to show them to you. So tonight we have a lot of ducklings in our hands, a lot of spoonies too, okay? Some sprig out there, some top notchers. So appreciate that. We're gonna do a good job trying to get you identification keys, and Chris is also gonna share rules and regulations with you later. So we'll go ahead and get started with our program. All right. So tonight we're going to do some duck identification, and basically I'd like to give a shout out to Mike Sorsky. He was a hunter locally here that hunts in Los Banos area. It takes a lot of great photographs, and he shared these photos with me many years ago. He probably doesn't even remember. But anyways, we have some really good identification photos that we'll be able to use, and it should help you for identification of waterfowl. Now, some of these are so clear, this is not what you're going to see out in the field a lot of times, but we're going to be looking a lot tonight at wings. And I'm going to, just a second here, I need to get my pointer together. All right, we're going to be looking at all this area right here on a lot of the ducks that we're going to be looking at tonight. So, there are 3 types of waterfowl. There's ducks, geese, swans. that you'll see out here in the Pacific Flyway. Especially now, duck season starts Saturday. In this area where I live, Las Vegas, the Balance Estate, the central part of the flyway, basically, the grasslands. You'll see coots and moorhens out there. They're not really a waterfowl. They're part of the rail family. They do have limits where you can take them. They are pursued sometimes, but not too often. When we talk about waterfowl, there's many parts that will help us identify what they are. Some, they all have webbed 3 toes. They have a nail at the end of each toe. And puddle ducks, the feet will appear centered over under their body. Their rear toe is not lobed, like a diving duck. And diving ducks, their feet appear to be more rearward on the duck itself, and it is a lobed toe. Waterfowl bills are used for their feeding, the different types. They have the lamellae there along the sides of their bills that help them filter water out, filter seeds, filter microorganisms, which they feed on when they're out there on the ponds. Some aids to identification that'll help you in the field, and some of this all comes with time. And if you have a mentor, that's great. If you're by yourself, the best way to look at this and analyze it is know what ducks you're looking for, wait for them to take off in flight, and see how they have their flock formations, what their wing beat speed is, what their silhouettes look like. Some ducks look dumpy and short, some look long, elongated and thin. The color patterns when they're in flight, from the head to the chest to the belly, sometimes that can really help you. The wings, as we said, you'll be able to identify things that way. The sounds they make, the habitat they're in, and when you have them in hand, vermiculated feathers is one thing that can help you identify whether a puddle duck is a male or not. Vermiculation is the banding of the feather. You can see these have little bands of dark and light, and those stand for male puddle ducks. When you have a puddle duck, it's a male if it has vermiculated feathers. When we talk about habitat types, sometimes the habitat determines what type of ducks you'll be in there. It's not always true, but for the most part, your freshwater ponds will consist of puddle ducks. You'll have some divers, like ringnecks, that will also inhabit those areas. But the open ocean and water, mainly divers. Rivers and lagoons, you'll get a mix of ducks and some mergansers. When we talk about the major categories of ducks, there's 2 types we just mentioned, puddle ducks and diving ducks, okay? Puddle ducks are they are different species. They have different habitats. You'll notice they don't really cross mingle that much. When we talk about differences, I mentioned where the feet are in relation to the body. Their legs, they're more centered for a puddle duck, more towards the rear on a diver. Puddle ducks tip over to feed, rarely dive completely under the water, whereas a diving duck will, sometimes up to 200 feet. Long-tailed ducks are known to dive 200 feet or more. Generally, the puddle ducks have a very colorful iridescent speculum. That's the rear feathers of their wing. We'll talk about that. And they spring into the air when they take off. Whereas diving ducks will scamper along the surface, get it building up speed before they take flight. As we mentioned, puddle ducks are very bright. They have bright colored speculums, bright colors. The males will be the brighter of the two. 2 purposes. Usually the ladies like my wife, she's more made up than I am, has more makeup, but the men here in the duck world, they're the ones that will attract predators away from the nest. And the females who are sitting on the nest will help protect them by being drab color. They won't be as noticeable as the males. Okay. Once again, they jump straight out off the water for flight, take flight. They feed by dabbling and tipping. Here you can see a pintail. Obvious reason why it has a pin, a straight long tail at the end. Then the mallard is there. We'll talk about mallards. They're the most popular duck here in North America. A lot of people have seen them. The typical name for them is a greenhead, okay? But you'll see this color thing, a greenhead, white ring around the neck, a chestnut chest, and a nice gray underbelly. Both have white underwings. If you have one of those mojo ducks or spinning wing decoys, you'll notice that they're made black and white. Well, that's very helpful as far as decoying. Chris will get into that a little bit later. But the speculum area, very bright blue, iridescent, sometimes purple, sometimes green, depending on how you turn it, with white bars over both of them, okay? On the males, it'll be brighter and consist of more feathers than on the female. Okay, here's an early season drake, also known as the eclipse plumage. Ducks go through 2 molts typically, puddle ducks. They go through one in the spring, and then when they get the new feathers, new flight feathers come in, they'll go through another molt where they lose all these drab feathers that have kept them safe during the time period. There'll be a link in a links page I send you later. Here we have, what do we have? We have 2 mallards. We know they're mallards, but one's exhibiting female characteristics. It's having the orange beak with the black splotches. You can see some hen feathers here along the chest, even some in the head. What this is actually is a hermaphrodite mallard. It's exhibiting both male and female characteristics. Very popular duck here in the Pacific Flyway. One of the top-notch, as I said, ducks, the pintail. Very beautiful duck, very graceful in the sky. You'll see that their body is very elongated from tip of wing to tip of wing, and body-wise, they're very elongated and angular, not stumpy like a mallard. Their speculum consists of kind of a bronze and a green and a white bands. You can see kind of a rust at the top and cream on the bottom, okay? Once again, the hen will have the same color pattern, but it just won't be as extreme as a drake. Here's the pintail hen. Honestly, this probably is the most violated duck, I guess, probably out there as far as causing violations and, you know, just misidentified of all the ducks. It's a brown duck. It quacks very little. It looks like it could be some large small duck or a small large duck. It just kind of fits into things, and probably more times than not gets taken in excess of the limit. So most misidentified in flight. Here you can see them all together, the 2 drakes, 1 hen. It's easy to identify the drake when they're flying together, but when they're separate, very hard to notice. Here we go with a early season drake, also known, like I said, as the eclipse stage. You know it's a drake because it has a blue markings on the bill. The hen typically has just a black bill. And if you were to look, you'd probably find some vermiculate feathers back here to show in the rear first, when you first get them. Here's another example of early season eclipse drakes. A lot of the ducks out there right now in the grasslands look just like this. They're just starting to get their full plumage, and you'll get a lot of them that are mixed like this with brown mottled feathers. Here's an American widgeon, another popular duck in the grasslands or throughout our Pacific Flyway, northern Sacramento Valley. You can see their speculum is very, very easy to see. Well, it's not just the speculum, it's the coverts on the top. Those are called the covert feathers, the ones that are on the top part of the wing. It's a solid white. And from a distance, that's very easily seen. You can sometimes also see that they're called bald plates. They'll have a white patch on top of their head, and that will be very visible. Okay. Beautiful duck. Here's another misidentified duck. It's called the gadwall. Typically, their flight and their silhouette looks very similar to a mallard. They quack, not quite as like a mallard, but somewhat deeper quack than the mallard. But they have a white speculum. So this is very visible when they're in flight. They turn sideways, it glints in the sun. You'll be able to tell that it's a gadwall. And when they start quacking, if they do, you'll know that too. But sometimes early morning, they have the same coloration. You'll see like the dark chest and the white underbelly, you know, somewhat look like a mallard in low light conditions, okay? But limits 7 of those. You don't have to worry about those as much. Northern shovelers, also known as spoonies or spoonbills, all kinds of names for this. Some of them not good, but you know, they have a green head. They're very vibrant, very good-looking ducks. Just have this big proboscis, this big bill out there that makes them look a little funny in flight. But they're very willing to help fill your limit usually. So green head for the drake. Once again, you see the drab female. Their wing patches will consist of green towards the speculum, and it'll have blue, which is not very visible here on the coverts. Maybe we'll see we'll see more pictures later of this duck. Okay, here you can see a little bit of the blue coverts. You'll see the green on the speculum. This is an early season eclipse drake. As the season goes later into the year, you'll see a lot of greatly colored shovelers out there that actually look very nice. Here's my favorite duck. You'll see I have these mounted on the wall behind me. Great eating duck called the green-winged teal. It's the smallest of puddle ducks, and green eye patch, chestnut head, really nice looking duck. Not as fast as people think they are. They think they're super fast, but it's all relative to their size. Another beautiful duck we get here in a Pacific Flyway is the cinnamon teal. The male is bright cinnamon red, the female again drab. You can see they have the blue covert feathers on their wing, and they have green speculum feathers, just like the spoonie, pretty similar, but smaller in size, and that male is very obvious when it's flying through. Here's 2 ducks that they're really not as rare as they used to be. Here in the grasslands area, we're seeing more and more of the cinnamon teal and the blue-winged teal. They kind of share the same habitat, and you can see the blue-winged teal has this crescent white patch in front of the face. The females of both species look almost identical. It would take an expert to identify one versus the other. Okay. Wood ducks, highly prized bird to get in the bag, especially for fly fishermen. These feathers right here, these vermiculated feathers, they're often used for fly tying. A lot of iridescence and beautiful colors in there. A lot of people like these for taxidermy mounts. The female, drab, but you can see she has the same morphology characteristics of the drake, kind of hooded a little bit, white patch around the eye. Very, very beautiful duck. When we get into diving ducks, they're not so colorful. They're mostly black, white, gray, and some have red to them, but the wings themselves are usually some type of black, white, or gray, and makes identifying them pretty hard sometimes. As we talked about, divers take off by running across the water. Before they take flight, they will not jump straight up into the air like the puddle ducks will. They use their legs to get themselves going. Here's one of the highly prized for table fare. It's the canvasback, which has this rusty chestnut head, sloping black bill. This whole head slopes kind of an angular, 45 degrees, versus we'll see a redhead, which is completely different. The body is highly vermiculated feathers. The banding of colors is usually when in flight, you're gonna see dark, light, and dark, because there's some dark feathers under here, under the belly, and the rear end of the canvasback on almost all diving ducks, actually. Here we see the redhead. Sometimes people misidentify redheads and canvasbacks, but you'll see redheads have blue bills with this little white ring right there, but their forehead and their head goes up abruptly compared to the canvasback, okay? Ringnecks, they have kind of the same morphology as the redhead. They do have a distinguishable ring. It's not like a mallard's. It's not going to be white, but if you look at it closely, it'll be a lighter color than the rest of the bird. And also the beak is the telltale sign of this beak being a ringneck. Okay. There's a good identification book out there called The Master Method of Duck Identification. Sometimes you'll see these in bookstores available. They talk about the beak size, and they'll have pictures in here with full pictures with wings, and it's a good book to get in case you need something for further identification. We have scaup, which are also known as bluebill. There's two different types of scaup. Their limits are the same. There's a lesser scaup, which will have a blue tint to the head and the iridescence. Sometimes you'll see iridescence in the head, it'll be blue. The greater has a green iridescence to it. So that's how you can tell whether you have a lesser or a greater. But as far as limits purposes go, a scaup is a scaup, whether it's lesser or greater. Buffleheads, really small, the smallest of the diving ducks. They fly really low and to the surface of the water, typically a really quick wing beat. You'll see these little patches. The males look like flying dominoes. They have white and black all over the place. And then the females have this nice little white patch next to their eye. Another one that's a low flyer, really fast, is the ruddy duck, okay? Like, they would rather dive though than fly to get away from something. They'd rather just dive their way out of it instead of take off in flight. But you'll see these really early in the morning, just zooming through. You'll hear them coming. They just fly pretty fast. Goldeneyes. This one's a common goldeneye. Common goldeneye has a little round patch in front of the eye. And there's two types of goldeneyes. The next one is called a Barrows. And you'll see the white patch is kind of bar-shaped in front of the eye. It says crescent, but I just think of bar because it's elongated, being the Barrows, and then the common is kind of round like a C. That's how I remember it. Mergansers. Mergansers are included in your duck limits. I don't know why most people shoot them. They're not really desirable table fare. Some people will take them for mounting purposes to add to their taxidermy collection, but they're really kind of fish eaters. You'll see them in rivers and sloughs chasing fish. So you'll have the common merganser. You have the red-breasted merganser, really pretty birds. And you have the hooded merganser, probably the most sought after of the mergansers, because when a taxidermist can duplicate this, it looks really nice on a taxidermy mount. Next, we'll get into geese. Okay, there's 4 main types of geese. We have Canada geese, white geese, the white fronts, and brant. Brant actually have their own type of regulation and limit. But when we talk about Canada geese, they're considered dark goose for regulation purposes. You'll see these everywhere nowadays: parks, golf courses, schoolyards. Those are resident geese. There are some that still migrate. But they do come in different size variations. There's a large Canada goose. There's basically, known as your honker, your Western Canada. You have a lesser, which is still honker, makes the noise like a honking goose. And then you have cackling geese, which consist of cacklers and Aleutians. Those are still known as Canada geese. They're still considered dark geese. Okay. Another dark goose is the white-fronted goose. Okay. These are highly desired for table fare. They eat all the right things to make them taste really good. So highly sought after as far as game goes. And when we get to the white geese, there's two different types of white geese. There's the snow geese, which will have a grin patch here on their beak, which is a little bit larger than the Ross goose, which is usually a shorter neck, and they'll have warding on the bill. But maybe even a higher pitched honk, or not really a honk, but call to them. It's a little higher pitched than the actual snow goose is. Okay. Examples. This is your snow. Has the grin patch, the black there. It looks like it's smiling. And some Ross geese. They're usually smaller. It's hard to tell because they're not next to a snow goose. They're smaller in size, shorter neck, warding on the bills. And this is a mistake right here, a swan. It's amazing how many these get shot, misidentified for geese. Swans have white wings from all the way from the body to the tip of their feathers. So if it has all white, it is not legal to take. Okay, snow geese have black tips. There's another bird out there called a white pelican that has black tips, but they look totally different than a snow goose. So don't think because it's white with black tips, it's legal to take. And swans, not legal to hunt. And almost done. Not a goose, okay? Please do not shoot these. When they come through in the fog in a V formation, some people get really excited, and not something that we want to have get shot. And sorry. And one more thing, here we go. This one's a good slide. I want to see if I can pull up my survey. Please. All right, can't do it. All right. Well, I had a survey question for this, and I wanted you to tell me what it is, but for some reason I cannot pull it up. Robert, can you help me out? Can you pull up a poll? Sorry about that.
No, I can't.
Okay. All right. For some reason, it's not showing me my polls. Basically, my poll question was what I thought was a good one is, how many different ducks do you see in here? What ducks are out there? Well, obviously, we have the spoonies, okay? The spoonies are all here. We have some widgeon. Okay, this one being a female. You can see the coverts. They're not white, not fully white, like on this male. It has a fully white covert, fully white covert. Okay, so we have a lot of widgeon. And there's one other duck in here. And I wonder from the chat if anybody can get it. It's this one right here. This is the oddball. If somebody can chat in and see what that, if they get it right. That's the gadwall. All right, Chris is back. Just in time. And
Yeah, internet went out.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm having a hard time myself, Chris. Let me see. And one more thing. Sorry, I had a technical difficulties. That always happens in Zoom. Last slide. It's not going. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Actually, I'm going to try it one more time. Nope, not going to work. All right. So I had one more slide, but I'll see if I can get that up for you. It was another example of the different birds we have. Okay. There it is. Last slide. Can you see this? Did I share it? No, I didn't.
Not yet.
There it is. One more slide. How many birds are in this one? Anybody tell me? 1, 2, or 3? How many do you see, Chris?
I'll move my stuff around. We got 1, 2, 3 different kinds.
3 different kinds. Which ones are they?
You got your pintail.
Right there.
Yep. You got your widgeon.
Huh?
And you got your gadwall.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right. It's all up to you now. Let's see where we're at. You can go ahead and take over from here and share your screen, and we'll keep going.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing and go ahead.
Let me put it in presenter mode. All right. Is it up?
Yep.
All right. So with me, this is my 3rd time on Zoom, but we got a lot to tell you about here. We obviously can't go over every regulation that there is, but we're going to touch on the main majority of the regulations where we get questions or the violations we find most common in the field. So first thing is you need to know where you're at. There is a couple different waterfowl zones in the state of California. Starting in the very top of California in the green, we have the northeastern California zone, which their duck season is already open. They open up before the rest of us because they freeze up quicker. They get ice and it gets really cold and there's no birds. The majority of the state is balance of the state, which is the white, which is where I patrol, and Sean lives there in Merced County. You have the South San Joaquin Valley, which is kind of that pinkish color, a little bit south of where we are. And then down towards LA, you have Southern California zone, and then you have the Colorado River zone. It's important to know which zone you're in because each zone has different regulations on what type of waterfowl you can shoot and when. For the balance of state zone, the duck limits this year, you can shoot a maximum of 7 ducks a day. And within that 7, you could have 2 hen mallards, 2 scopper bluebill. You could have 1 pintail of either sex, 2 canvasbacks of either sex, and 2 redheads of either sex. But remember, you can only shoot 7 ducks total, but you can combine it any way you like as long as you're within what the regulations say you can have. For the northeastern San Joaquin, South San Joaquin Valley, and Southern California, everything is the same. 7 mallards, 7 ducks total. Of those, you could have 2 hen mallards, 2 scalper bluebill, 1 pintail of either sex, 2 canvasbacks of either sex, and you could have 2 redheads of either sex. When it comes to the goose limits and the balance of states and the South San Joaquin Valley zone, you could have 30 total geese this year. Within that 30, you could have 20 white geese, which remember, those are your snows and your rosses, and 10 dark geese. In the balance of states and the South San Joaquin, we also have an early resident Canada goose season, which just passed. But during that time, you could have shot 10 large Canada geese. And those other 2 subspecies of Canada geese Sean talked about are not allowed to take during that time, just the big ones that you see at golf courses. For the SoCal and Colorado River zones for goose, you can take 23 total, of which you could have 20 white geese, 3 dark geese, that's in your southern zone. If you jump over to Colorado River zone, you could have 24 total geese, which includes 20 white geese and 4 dark geese. The duck limits change slightly in the Colorado River zone. There you could have still 7 ducks, which may contain 7 mallards, but not more than 2 females. And the big difference is, 2 female mallards or Mexican-like ducks. Down there in the Colorado River zone, you're about as far south as you can get, and we do get some Mexican-like ducks that travel north. With that, you could also get 1 pintail, 2 canvasbacks, 2 redheads, and 2 scalp, and those are of either sex.
Hey, Chris.
Please. Yes.
Just for their knowledge, I looked up what Mexican duck was. It doesn't say Mexican-like on Wikipedia, but they do look a lot like female mallards, but they're a lot darker body-wise, and their head's a lot lighter. So they have a really light head, like a lighter head and a darker body, and beaks and everything look pretty much like a mallard. So just for their information.
Perfect. When it comes to geese in the Colorado River Zone, you could have 24, which may include 20 white geese or up to 4 dark geese. And remember, on your waterfowl, your possession limit is triple the daily bag limit, which we talk about here in a sec. The youth waterfowl hunts for everywhere except for the northeastern zone comes after the season. Juniors 17 and under are eligible to hunt that. In the northeastern zone, because they're so cold and frozen up at the end of the season, they actually run their youth waterfowl hunt before the season opens. All right, when it comes to your bag limit is what you can legally possess at the end of each day. So like we just talked about, 7 ducks is what you could have per day. Can't go over 7 ducks. This one is using the example of the balance of states. Balance of states, you could have 30 geese in combo. If you were in a different zone where it said you can only have 23 geese or 24 geese, that would be your daily bag for the day. Your possession is what you can legally possess at home or after hunting 3 days. So if you were hunting in the balance of state zone, you could come down, you could hunt 3 days, kill limits every single day, have 21 ducks, 90 geese, and you're within your limit. Okay, jumping over into the more regulation side, when it comes to methods of take, what we're talking about is what you can use and what you have to use while in the field. So when it comes to shotgun, for waterfowl, you have to have a 10 gauge or smaller. Most wildlife areas and refuges allow it to where you can only have 12 gauge or smaller. Most common calibers are 12 gauge, 20 gauge. Some people use, 28, 410, but the most common is 12 and 20. Your gun has to have a plug in it. What a plug is your gun can only be capable of accepting 3 shells maximum. So 2 shells inside the magazine, 1 shell inside the chamber. If you buy a gun from a gun store, make sure that you take it apart, and there should be some sort of wooden dowel or a stick or something inside the magazine which stops those rounds. Without that wooden dowel in there, your gun's going to hold 4 or 5 rounds in the magazine, and it's going to become a violation to possess that in the field. While you're duck hunting, you have to use non-toxic ammunition. There's all kinds of non-toxic. There's steel, tungsten, nickel, copper, heavy shot. There's a new one called Boss Ammo. That's a mixture of some stuff. It can be pricey if you get into the heavier tungsten heavy steel, or you can shoot steel for less price and it works just fine. Just make sure you're not using some of your grandpa's old lead loads. Then you're gonna get in trouble. The boxes should say steel load, non-toxic, waterfowl load. If it's an older box that doesn't say that, or if it says lead or lead warning, definitely ask somebody before you take it out. While waterfowl hunting, your maximum shot size is T-shot and non-toxic. Most common is people use BBs and 2s for geese, 2s, 3s, 4s for your waterfowl needs. Anything smaller than that, it just doesn't have enough to take them down unless you're shooting teal really close. But I know Sean will shoot 7s, but his birds are landing in the decoys. Decoys. So there's all kinds of decoys. When it comes to decoys, you just have to make sure you don't have any live decoys. What's meant by live decoys is you can't bring your pet duck out duck hunt with you and tie a string to it. And you can't shoot a bird, cripple it, and leave it in your decoys flopping around. All your game that you shoot, one has to be dead and brought in to your possession, and you can't place anything out there that's live to attract the birds. Another type of decoy that we need to talk about is spinning wing decoys. Most people know them as mojos. There's 2 really common types of mojos. The first one has a stand, sits maybe 3-4 feet out of the water. The duck has a full body, sits on top of it, and the wings spin. This is usually operated by a motor or by a pull string. If you are using this type of decoy with a motor, a pull string, anything mechanical, it cannot be used till after December 1st. This also goes for mojos that sit on top of the water that might be floating, or there's a brand called Flocka Flicker that has a little tiny spinner that spins on the top. Those are also illegal because the wording itself, or directly out of the regulations, it's unlawful to use a device that are either electronically powered or activated under anything other than natural wind to directly or indirectly cause rotation of decoy wings or blades that simulate wings when attempting to take waterfowl between the start of the season and November 30th. What that means is if it's anything except for wind powered and it rotates causing a wing, you can't use it. What is allowed all season, wind powered, and anything that is powering a foot. If you have a duck that's got feet that are spinning, if it's got a bubbler splashing water out the back, if it has a head that's rotating, if it has wings that flap straight up and down, those are all legal year round. So I just want you guys to really get it in your head. If it's got a battery or some sort of pull string, or it's got a hair dryer that runs it, all those would be illegal to use till after December 1st. And just remember, wind and anything that's powered not creating a wing, okay to use all year. Anything you want to touch on that one, Sean?
No, that's on. If it has any rotational effect, it's illegal. There was one that Cabela's made that didn't completely rotate, but it had a rotation to it. That's illegal. Anything that spins on an axis would be illegal. All right, let me see how well you guys were paying attention to Chris's limit. I got a poll here. I couldn't launch 2 of them, which was a shame, but this one's a good one. Let's see how you answer this one. We'll see who our sprig and our ducklings are. You have 6 ducks in your bag, 2 hen mallards, a pintail, 2 teal, and a spoonie. That's 6, right? A medium to large sized duck is coming in, but you can't tell what it is. You, A, shoot it to finish your limit. B, pass on it, shooting it. C, try to work it around your decoy spread to try and identify it. Okay, I'll give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Actually, you guys keep going. I'll let you go. There's still a lot missing. All right, close the poll. 1 person made the mistake. All right. So the answer was the bottom one. Try to work it around to your decoy spread to identify it. Or passing on it, pass shooting on it. That's not going to get you in any trouble. But what if you shoot it not knowing what it is, and it happens to be that infamous hen pintail? You just gone over the limit. Could be a hen mallard. All those different things could have happened that might cause you to get in a little bit of trouble. So the bottom 2 choices are both correct, but the bottom one is probably the best. All right. So before Chris leaves, is he still there? He's probably fell off again. We had some quote. There you are. Falling off, huh? All right. So some questions that came up and they're out there is, what does a person do when they're contacted by a game warden out in the field? Now,
Am I back on there? I lost you.
yeah. Oops, stop sharing. Do you hear me, Chris? What does a person do when they're contacted by a game warden? What would you like to see them do?
So depends where you're at. Most of us that are checking waterfowl hunters, it's either going to be in the blind or it's going to be while on your way back to the check station or leaving the field. So good example, if we're walking out in the pond to check you on your blind, as we walk up, the biggest thing is safety. We want safety for you guys, safety for us. We want you to make sure that you point your guns in a safe direction. And don't worry about unloading your guns, fumbling, trying to get the shells out, trying to do something over the top. If you just set your guns in a safe spot, when we walk up, we'll identify ourselves, ask how you're doing. Let us know where your gun's at. Say, hey, we got 2 guns. They're over here. They're loaded. They're unloaded, whatnot. We will clear those guns. We will check licenses. We will check your plugs. We'll check your permits for the day. We'll check your gear. We'll check your birds, all that. And then we'll go on with our day. If you guys are coming off the wildlife area or going to a check station or leaving your club and we happen to stop you, same thing. Let us know where your firearms are. We want to make sure that we can clear them. That way there's no accidental discharges, something that could injure you guys or injure us. And we'll do the same thing. We'll check guns, check birds, check everything. And we'll just go about it, ask how your hunt was, and it'll be a good time.
All right. Good. Very important to have that gun. Just don't, if you're nervous, don't try to unload it. I've had 2 accidental discharges in my career, and it's scary as heck when somebody accidentally discharges their firearm. At least they were pointed in a safe direction. No one got hurt. Let's say you're sitting in the blind and a dove comes by and dove season's open. Can you shoot it? Let's say you're on a refuge.
Depends where you're at. So if you're on a wildlife area or refuge that allows dove hunting and it is dove season, then yeah, that would be a legal species that you could take on that area. If some areas don't allow dove hunting, some areas don't allow you to shoot anything other than waterfowl from the blind. So it's area specific, which is up to you guys to figure out before you actually head into the field and figure out what is allowed to take on that given day at that wildlife area refuge.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked you. A lot of areas do have only certain authorized species you can take. So be careful that you're not shooting at something that's not authorized for that area. Boaters, people who boat out there for waterfowl, can they shoot a duck while their motor is running or in the water?
So there's a big misconception that your motor has to be completely out of the water. For years I heard it, and what the law is you can't have any forward momentum. So if you're boating along, you see a duck that you want to shoot, you stop your boat, there's no forward momentum, you can have your motor on and take that waterfowl. If you are under power or you're still moving forward from the momentum of that engine, that would be illegal to shoot. If you're on a dedicated scull boats aren't allowed to have motors on them. It's a specialized type boat. It's a special skill. Those people that are in the scull boats generally, they're a different type of hunter. But on those specific boats, you cannot have a motor attached to it at all before you start taking waterfowl.
All right. Here's another question. If I see a violation take place, what should I do? Same for like a state area or a national refuge. What's their best course of action?
So if it's obviously something that's safety violation, something that somebody's going to be in danger, somebody's doing something very stupid, call 911. 911 is emergency dispatch. They will get a hold of our dispatch. They will dispatch us, county, whoever to handle that situation. If it is something that's not life-threatening, you can call our CalTIP number. I know Sean has a link that he's either going to post or send to you guys. But what CalTIP is it's our own information line. You call the CalTIP number. It's manned 24 hours a day. It's anonymous. You leave your information if you'd like, or you leave all the pertinent information, where you're at, what you saw, license plates, who did it, what they killed, where they stashed it, anything that has to do with the case. And then that will go to our dispatch. Our dispatch will put it on the radio for whatever county, and the game wardens working in that county or around can key up and get your information or find out where the violation occurred. The feds also have one. It's 1-844 FWS TIPS, and that's on the federal side. And they man theirs 24 hours a day. I believe it works the same. Another thing with ours is if it turns into a huge case, something really big, there is also rewards that can come with it depending on the type of case.
Okay, good. On another note like that, somebody asked a question earlier today about numbers that were on a map that was for a hunt area for a refuge. And what those are field numbers that the refuge uses for to determine what the water flow is going to be, which field water is going to go in. it's good if you have those maps with you, because if you're in an emergency, you need somebody to come out to you, having an idea of what field you're in will help us get you there, get to you a lot quicker. Or if you have a violation, if you know what field it's coming in from, it'll help us too. So get to learn your refuges, get the refuge map, take a picture of it. All those different things could help us help you. So something for the refuge. Another refuge question, how many shells can they carry with them when they're out there in the field?
So every wildlife area and refuge is obviously different. When you go to the wildlife area or refuge, like Sean said, there's usually maps. On the back of the maps, there's specific regulations to that area. The majority of the wildlife areas and refuges, you can only have 25 shells in possession while in the field. There is a couple wildlife areas and refuges where they say 25 shells, period, for the whole day. Merced National is one of them. If you run out of your 25 shells, you're done. Whereas other areas, you can shoot your 25, go back to your vehicle, get 25 more, go back and hunt, as long as you don't physically possess more than 25 for that day.
All right. Another question that, man, we're getting a lot of them. When it comes to possibly having over limit, maybe you make a mistake, you shoot the wrong bird, or maybe your dog finds an extra bird coming in from the field. What should you do with that extra bird? I know there's two different instances there. One you're responsible for, one your dog is responsible for. What's the best course?
So obviously we want to preach ethics to everybody. We want to be ethical hunters. We want everybody with us to do the right thing. Two examples. The first one, if you shoot something you're not supposed to, your best bet is to call and say, hey, I messed up. Here's what happened. You meet with the game warden. We go over it. At the end of the day, you may get a ticket, which is easier than if you try and stick it in the mud. Somebody in the next blind sees you. They call. We go out there. Now we're demanding to see things. You're hiding game. It looks a lot worse. Our report's going to read, hey, he hid whatever it was he hid. He didn't be honest. And it's just easier to call us and we can figure out what we're going to do. And that would be for the first scenario. For the second scenario, if you've got your 7 birds and you're on the way back and your dog pops out of the tulies and he's holding on to a dead duck, leave that duck in the field. Don't switch it for one of the ducks you have. Something in the field's going to eat it, coyotes, foxes, eagles, whatever it may be. But you don't want to put yourself in an over limit situation just because your dog found something.
Yeah. Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah.
All right. Just a couple more because we're running up against the time, and Robert might have some more questions for us that need to be answered. But, working on a refuge, you get your permit, you get an assigned spot. Is it okay to switch that assignment just because it looks better, or what's the best process for somebody to do that?
So it depends the type of areas you're hunting. So when you go to the wildlife area, say Los Banos wildlife area, for instance, Los Banos has parking lots, free roam, they have blind areas and assigned ponds. So if you get a free roam at, say, parking lot 5, you can hunt anywhere along parking lot 5. That's fine. You go to one pond, parking lot 5, you don't like it, you can jump to another pond. You're allowed to go wherever you want right there. If you get a blind though, and say you get blind 2, and you show up to blind 2 is not shooting, and you say, hey, all these birds are landing over here in blind 1A, there's nobody in it. You physically cannot just walk over and hunt that blind. You're only allowed to hunt the blind that's on your permit. If you wanted to hunt that blind, you'd have to pack your stuff up, drive back to the check station, ask them if that blind was available, switch out your cards for a new card with that blind, go all the way back out, and then back to your blind. And the same goes for an assigned pond. If it's an assigned pond, that's your pond. You have to hunt in it unless you do what we just talked about.
Yeah. And some of the reasons they do is like that is not just to tell you where to go, it's to give you a better hunt, to make it a safer situation. Because if there is a hot pond out there, we don't want 50 guys trying to cram into one pond. So having a assigned pond where there's a certain limit of people that get assigned to it, it's trying to get a better shoot, a quality shoot, and keeping it safe, right? All right. Robert, do you have any other questions that were presented to us tonight that should be addressed?
I got to say, Mike and Greg have kept up with the questions coming in, answering them one-on-one, really good. So I would say the one that was repeated a bunch dealt with possession limit. When does it end? can I shoot a limit of ducks, take them home, and then the people that I live with also have, also shot a limit of ducks. How many ducks can we have at home? When does possession end, basically?
You want to handle that one, Chris, or you want me to take it?
You can go for it. Yeah, that's your
All right.
specialty on that
Well,
one.
Well, basically, when it comes to, and we covered this in R3 H3 huddle, or H3 R3 huddle, harvest huddle hour. Your possession limit is for you individually. If you have other members in your house, like in my household right now, my son's currently home from college, my wife's here, we have possibility for 3 possession limits. So we could have legally in our possession, not yet, obviously, it hasn't happened, but we could have, 63 ducks. That's 21 a person, 21 times 3, 63. We could have, man, I couldn't imagine this, 90 times 3, 270 geese. Not gonna happen. I don't have the freezer space for it and don't really want that to happen. But that's technically what we could have in our possession at that point. We're maxed out possession-wise. We cannot possess or go out and take more game unless we give away what we have or we use it. So that's what's important. Make sure you use the game. A lot of times people end up putting game in their freezer and it stays there too long. It gets freezer burnt. They throw it out, and that's actually a violation of waste of game. So you have to use it somehow. Some people make, actually this is a question I have for you, a last survey question. Let's go ahead and run that. Dun, dun, dun. And here's the last survey question. So now you have your limit of ducks. What are you going to do with them? Okay. Curious what you guys have to say. And I see everybody's been holding on to our webinar. I appreciate you coming. We've held you for an hour. And thank you for coming. Definitely love that you're here.
Sorry about getting kicked off twice.
Yeah.
That's how it rolls sometimes.
No problem.
Not on the internet.
All right. So we have some more people to vote here. But basically, yeah, we're getting ready to harvest some ducks this weekend, and a lot of people, unfortunately, I can see not too many people answer this way, but some people don't like duck. They don't realize that it's a meat that doesn't have much fat in it. You can overcook it and make it taste terrible. So let's see. I'm closing the poll, and I'm gonna share the results. So a lot of oven roasters in here. Okay. Some people oven roast, it's high heat, short time, sometimes stuffed with rice or vegetables or apples or whatever it is. Myself, I like poppers, barbecuing them. That's one of my favorites. But they are great meat if you don't overcook it. So, or use it in a chili. That's what Chris likes to do. Making sausage.
Really good.
Yeah.
If you look up Wild Eats makes their own recipes and chili and some good seasonings for it.
All right. So that's what we're looking at. I wanted to tell you guys thank you for tonight. Is there any other closing word, Robert?
No, thanks to you two on the panel and the two behind the scenes, and thanks for everybody participating.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Can you record these chats, Robert?
Yep, doing it right now.
Any chats that weren't covered or answered, I will try to go back and cover them with you. I will be sending you a message after this recording that will contain the links that you might be able to use after tonight for research, for further education. Please use them. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me. I'm on our Advanced Hunter Education page for contact information. I hope to have another webinar, possibly November 4th, and possibly covering bear. That's what I'm looking at, bear hunting. So if you can make it, please look for us. If you haven't signed up for our Facebook or Twitter, please do so. A lot of our classes will be announced by that way. So to all, thank you for coming tonight. Good night, and be safe out there.